And I'm one of the organizers of the Third World Women's Caucus, which has been involved with the Women's Encampment for a Future of Peace and Justice. And I'm glad I'm glad to see so many people out. As you all, I hope everyone here has heard of it. Maybe some local people are here that haven't heard much about the Women's Encampment, but that action grew out of the Green Common Women's Encampment in England. Yay! Where women have joined together to make a statement, a political statement as women against the nuclear buildup, and also to make a statement against the injustices in the country and in the world. And we grew out of inspiration from Green Common, and we're growing from women's strength and also from the strength of all people. And today's event just seemed like a natural. The encampment is about 20 or so miles away from here. And as you all know, Harriet Tubman's home is right across the lawn, and she lived there. And also 17 miles away is the church where she worshiped and where she is buried. And this event today is to bring in the issues of peace and also justice. A lot of times people have noted that in the peace movement, you come to think of it in terms of nuclear disarmament, but we know that it's more than that. And to have a really peaceful world, you have to have justices of people. And some of the issues that the Third World Women's Caucus has been particularly interested in has been the connections. For example, in South Africa, where the plutonium and uranium is mined, the workers there are virtually slaves, and their health is being affected by digging up these chemicals. And also the fact that they're not getting anything out of this. They're being exploited. And the chemicals and the plutonium that they're making and mining are for nuclear weapons. And we feel that this is an injustice, and we want to continue to make these kind of connections, that to have a peaceful world, you have to remember who's being exploited in this world, and we have to raise our voices against these kind of injustices. The same is true for in terms of the poverty draft, that so many of our young people, and particularly young black males who are unemployed, are turning to the military for employment. And we feel that if money were spent in civilian production, that this kind of dependency on the military and the mindset involved in that wouldn't be there. That if our money were spent in developing transportation and developing solar energy and that kind of thing, that our young people wouldn't have to depend on employment that was made to kill people. And as you all know, there are wars in third world countries, and just the whole entire nuclear mentality is destructive for humankind. And so we're here to try to make a statement against that and mobilize people to know that there can be change. And that's why the Harriet Tubman home is so significant. We're trying to take strength from our people, from the people who have struggled in their lives to better humankind. And that's part of the goals of the encampment, and that's why we're trying to take encouragement and inspiration from our past. And it's so good to know that such a strong woman made it. She lived to be 100 years old. And she, really. And as Charles Bloxham will remind us, and Kim Everett as well, this woman, the odds against her were much more than what we're going through. She dealt with not only harassment, but she had a bounty on her head, dead or alive. We want this woman dead or alive. And she lived to be 100 years old against those odds. And she did it almost alone. She traveled back down south and made it without electricity, without phones, without barns. She made it. So we have to grow from that strength and know that if women like that can do it, we can do it. And we have to remember our past. And that's why we're here, to make that connection and to keep going. You know, anytime there's social change, there's going to be resentment from the community, misunderstanding, ignorance, and just a lot of pressure from the outside community because they don't understand the issues. And that's not all their fault, because the military has the money. They have the propaganda to make us feel that you know, that war is right, and that's the way it is. To be patriotic and to hold arms is the right way to go. But we're here because we know that's different, and it's going to be hard, and there's going to be some criticism, and there's going to be hardships. We know that, but we have to just keep going and remember that our past did it, and we have to keep on doing it. So I'm glad that everybody's here, and we're going to have a full program. I hope everybody can stand it all day. Today, I hope later on, after this particular program, Reverend Carter, who's been so nice and offered his home and his land, I think there's 20 acres or so. 26 acres. I think we should give him a hand to open that facility. And just a proven point of how our history is manipulated, Reverend Carter didn't know about Harriet Tubman until 1971. And that's because our educational system hasn't taught us this history. And he came here and developed this institution. He just built the library in '79. There's the other building over there is a conference center, and that's going to hold 300 people. So I hope when we all go back to our communities that we remember this place and remember that he did this work. And this is the only national historical land site of Harriet Tubman's home. So it's a very significant piece of land here. And I hope we all go back in our periodicals and what have you and remember this. So, okay, so let me give you a little background of the program. Valerie Talkman back there in the corner has helped organize. And so give her a hand. And we're going to start out, who are we going to start with? Oh, okay. We're going to start out with Gladys Bryant. I'll just go through and then I'll introduce everyone, who is Harriet Tubman's great-grandniece, and she lives about, seven miles away in Skaneateles. I could never say that word. And she's here. Kimberly Everett from American Friends Service Committee is going to give a presentation of anti-slavery and women's movement and the contributions women of color have made in those struggles in the past and to today, and some of the problems and some of the overall struggles that had to go on. Charles Bloxham, who's a very noted historian from Pennsylvania, has done extensive research in the upstate New York area, and also in Pennsylvania. He's now developing research all throughout the country on the Underground Railroad. And he's going to teach us a lot of the heroines that we may not know about, again, because our history hasn't been explained to us. And also Viney Burroughs, a internationally renowned actress and political activist, will perform. And that's going to be the first section of the program here. After everyone does their thing here, Reverend Carter will show us around and point out little things that you may not have noticed when you browsed the first time. After that, we're going to go back to the pond, and we're going to hopefully, I hope we have enough people, we're going to encircle the pond, and Charles is going to explain the significance of slave songs, and we're going to sing those songs around the pond. We're going to sing Wade Around the Water and all the other ones that kept us going in the past. From there, we're going to walk over to the AME Zion Church, where Harriet Tubman worshiped and is buried, and we're going to have a visual there, and also Queen Mother Moore, who is here so graciously, longtime political activist. She's going to speak there. And Thelma B. Moore, is she here? You're going to speak for us there as well? Okay, good. That's right. So all these wonderful women are going to offer their insight for us. I'm so glad they're here. And let's see. Okay, and we'll eat lunch there. I hope people brought their lunches. We have some women from the encampment bringing lunches for people, but we're going to eat in that area. From there, we'll walk over to the Cayuga Museum, where we'll have a tour of the museum and pay tribute in some form to Native American women. We'll have a presentation of their contributions, the Iroquois Nation, and also a slide presentation of Native American people. Excuse me. Now, the museum closes at 5, so from there we'll have buses and cars take us back to the encampment, and really that's the official kind of closing. Later that night, for people who are interested, we're going to go to the Army Depot and have a visual there with candles, and also we're going to sing slave songs, and we'll end the evening that way. That's going to be between 8 and 9.
It's going to be 9.
9?
At the general meeting last night, we decided that we really had to start at 9 because some of the new people coming to the camp.
Okay.
Needed orientation.
Okay. So 9? Okay, then that'll be 9. That's fine, yeah. So I hope as many people as possible can come to that. Tomorrow there's going to be another program, and we're going to have film series highlighting contributions of Latino women, black women, Hispanic women, Asian women, Native American women. That'll be during the day, roughly between 10 and 1. Bernice Reagan of Sweet Honey in the Rock will be there tomorrow. And also we'll have a workshop on racism, toward the end. And then if people want, we'll have another visual at the base, and that will end the entire program. So, with no more further ado, as they say, let me introduce Gladys Bryant, who is 77 years old, and her picture, I think, is at the Harriet Tubman funeral in the back, right, Reverend Carter? He'll point that out to us. It's over in the back in that area. I don't know if you may want to say anything. People are just so interested to see you. It's just so great.
I have no special claim to fame, except that I am a great-great-grandniece of Harriet Tubman. I was born in Auburn in 1905. And when I look at all these young faces here, I'm just amazed at the potential of what is here. When Harriet Tubman lived on this property, there were 3 brick houses, which 2 of them, I think, were burned down, and another just went to pieces. And so through the years, this location has been a sort of a mecca, a place where people who were on the road, we speak of hitchhikers and travelers. Harriet Tubman's home was always open to any person, color, race, nothing made any difference to her. But there was always something that she could serve you, refreshments of some kind, or put you in for the night, a place to stay. So her name, Harriet, Aunt Harriet, has meant a great deal to a lot of people. She had a number of cousins and nieces and nephews. She never had any children of her own. But everybody, townspeople, people in the village, called her Aunt Harriet. So there are many, many people who say, "Oh, I'm related to Harriet Tubman," and which is true. Everybody loved her and just took her to their heart, and she was a part of their family. So this is an encampment that you have. I'm sure if she were alive, that she would be very much aware of what was going on. And in Seneca Falls, at the Women's Museum, there is a photograph of Harriet among other women who were there. The movement toward learning more about black history, of course, has really come to the forefront. And there are many, many books that have been written about her. One of the books that I like is called Harriet Tubman, written by Earl Conrad. Earl Conrad was a native of Auburn, and he did a good deal of research and contacted many people And in his bibliography in the book, there are many resources. So for those who are interested in really going to the libraries and seeing what's available to read about her, you'll find many interesting anecdotes and stories about her. So welcome to Auburn and to the Harriet Tubman home from Gladys.
Okay, next we'll hear from Kimberly Everett, who is a member of the Third World Coalition of American Friends Service Committee. She drove all the way up here from Philadelphia. We went to school together, Friends Select. Yeah.
The other claim to fame.
I know. So this is Kim.
Hi. Essentially what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to do a couple of biographical sketches of Philadelphia women who were active in the Underground Railroad, and they worked with the Philadelphia Female Anti-Slavery Society. And I think it's very interesting, as I was driving up yesterday with my sister, we were just coming through the beautiful landscape of the Poconos and upstate Pennsylvania, and I said, can you imagine like making 19 of these trips on foot, no scaled roads? And I was just really impressed by your great-grand aunt, and you know, I just really think it's a marvelous contribution to history. The Underground Railroad, I guess, as you know, was one of the rarest and most common forms of non-cooperation with government. And I think that parallels what the women here at Seneca and Romulus are doing, because obviously as you scale the fence on August 1st, you were not cooperating, and just your presence has not been cooperative, I guess I would say. So. I work for the American Friends Service Committee. I work in the Information Services Department. I am a member of the Third World Coalition, primarily because I am a Third World woman. I'd like to start the presentation by talking a little bit about the Female Anti-Slavery Society and tell you what they did. They had their first meeting in 1933, and that was organized by Lucretia Mott. And I'm sure a lot of you may know Lucretia Mott. She's a very famous Quaker woman who was active in the abolitionist movement, and she was also very active in the women's rights movement. She worked with people like Elizabeth Cady Stanton, who I'll discuss a little bit later. I want to tell you a little bit about their work. At their first meeting in 1933, in December, 1833, I'm sorry. Thank God it wasn't 1933. We'd really be, you know, up a creek. There were quite a number of Third World women there. I say Third World / black women. Margaretta Fortin, who was the aunt of Charlotte Fortin, and Sarah Douglas. They both came from wealthy families. So as you can see, it was not, at this point, a movement of, you know, of mill women, or of slave women. Well, there weren't any real slaves in Philadelphia, but there were slave owners. And to help people in the Underground Railroad, in the South it was against the state law, and then it eventually became against the federal law in the North and the South. And I am particularly impressed with the Philadelphia Anti-Slavery Society because from its very inception it was an interracial group. And I think that's important primarily because the feminist movement now, I think, suffers from the lack of integration or the lack of identity with the struggles of all women, you know, and it has been accused of being an elitist, white, middle-class movement, and I'm going to trace some of the history of that, but I'm sure Charles Bloxton will probably go into more detail. Some of the activities of the Anti-Slavery Society prior to the Civil War included provided social work, social help for free black people. They circulated petitions against slavery in D.C. They supported free produce stores. They worked very closely with the Vigilance Committee. It's the intelligence wing of the Underground Railroad. They circulated literature. They organized meetings that were oftentimes mobbed, so they put up with a lot. They provided speakers. They offered support to both Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth on their frequent visits through Philadelphia. They helped and supported Lucretia Mott's work. They helped buy the freedom for Frederick Douglass.